Sensex and Nifty hit record highs in intraday trade after the US cut rates by 50 basis points, but both indices gave up some gains in late trade. Mid-caps continued to underperform.
The Supreme Court rejects pleas filed by Vodafone Idea and Bharti Airtel for recomputation of AGR dues. The move is a big blow for cash-strapped Vodafone Idea, which will now find it perhaps tougher to compete with its stronger peers.
Andhra Pradesh's new liquor policy gives a boost to liquor makers by facilitating retail sales by private players. The move is seen boosting volumes in the high consumption market. It was a day of two halves. First one, the joy coming in from the Fed's 50 basis points rate cut, and thereafter some bit of profit-taking and cold towel treatment for the markets. You're watching us here on a fresh edition of Markets Forward, your go-to show where we aim to get you all the key data points to gear up for the next trading day. I'm Mangla Malu, with me, Surbhi Upadhyay. Hi, Surbhi.
Hi, Mangla. That's a nice description, the cold towel treatment, right, for what was a very hot, highly anticipated move, that 50 basis points rate cut. Well, we have a lot to cover as we go over the next 20 minutes, and we'll start, of course, with the market action because that big event is finally out of the way. It did end with that 50 basis points rate cut, but guess what? India has really underperformed, a lot of major global markets today. So let's just start by taking a look at the market action. What we had at the open was about a 180-point gap up. What we had by close was just about a 50-60 point move on the Nifty. But actually, that's not too bad because intraday, the Nifty had slipped even below the 25,400 level. It was a lot of firefighting that came in from a lot of the frontline FMCG stocks, from a lot of banks. Actually, the Bank Nifty was doing very well today, along with some autos. Because of these sectors, we didn't see a wider fall. But on the other side, IT, for instance, didn't quite perform as per script. And there was a lot of profit taking on the PSU side of the market. All the large PSUs, even the mid-sized PSUs, they were down and out, in quite a fashion. But Manglam, I guess the bigger, standout, noticeable move today was in the mid-cap space with a fair amount of red.
Absolutely. There was a serious amount of red. In fact, for this week itself, the mid-cap index is down about 2.5%, taking today's downtick into account as well. The small-cap index itself was down about 3.5% for the week as well. For the fourth trading session in a row, the broader markets have seen more decliners than advancers. In fact, if I remember correctly, between 1,500 to 1,700 stocks have declined on a daily basis for the last 3 or 4 trading sessions on the trot. So you have, the crisscross lines coming up. They opened with a fair amount of criss. Thereafter, there was a cross. And now we have more stocks in the red than the number of stocks which were in the green today. But having said all of that, the market did respect important levels. 25,415 is where the Nifty's final close was. The street was positioned for the Nifty weekly options expiry. Mind you, today was that day as well where we had the weekly options expiry. The street positioned itself for a 20-point range around that 25,400 mark itself, and the market respected that. The Nifty bank conquered that 53,000 mark, went way above that within 4 points of a fresh record high, and thereafter saw a bit of a correction from the top, still held on to close above that 53,000 mark. So that's a positive. And the mid-cap index too, at one point was down almost 1,600 points from the highs, but from the lows, it did see a recovery. As the intraday chart tells you, towards the end, there were some people who were still believing that this is just routine profit taking, and perhaps thereafter pulled in some long positions as well.
Absolutely. So I guess down but not out. And given that while we were trading, US futures also turned positive. Let's see if indeed we have a positive close on Wall Street tonight, if the US market can finally make up its mind about whether this is a good rate cut or a bad rate cut. And
just to add one more point, yesterday before we went into the Fed event, we had the India VIX, which spiked to levels of 13.5. As we closed today, the India VIX fell below that 13 mark. We fell about 6 percentage points lower as well. And that's a positive because, key events are out of the way. The market, despite the volatility that we saw, did not show it in the India VIX or the volatility index.
Absolutely. So I think, a day of digesting this big news, this big event, and maybe we get back to the usual sort of print from tomorrow. So let's tell you what the lineup on the show is like. We'll, of course, get you all the key movers and shakers of the day, all the stock-specific action with Hormuz in just a bit. Stocks in focus include Vodafone Idea, Indus Towers and NTPC. We'll tell you why a lot of these stocks were buzzing. Also, along with them, a fair amount of the Alco Bev names like Tilak Nagar Industries, they were on the radar. So we'll tell you more about all of these stocks and the reasons behind those moves in just a bit, and then the events to watch tomorrow as well. But first up, today's movers and shakers. Hormaz, over to you.
Well, there was some bit of profit booking, recovery from the lows, but the eventual tick in the broader markets at least was in the red, and can't not talk about Vodafone Idea, which sprung out of nowhere and suddenly became the stock of the day. 20% lower, closing below its FPO price as well, the biggest single day drop since January of 2022, and that has now had a cascading effect on Indus Towers as well. At one point the stock was down 14%, but that saw some recovery from the lows of the day, eventually ending 9% lower. All these Alcobev stocks, as you mentioned, some of them did well, some of them didn't do very well, and Radico Khaitan was one of them. But some profit booking because the stock already in anticipation of this had rallied close to 30% in a month. What continues to rally though is Neogen Chemicals, and that was up in an otherwise weak broader market, 15% higher today. Now the stock has risen almost 40% in the last 6 trading sessions. The sector under pressure though was PSUs. Profit booking continuing there. Almost all, barring NTPC, almost all the PSE index constituents ending lower, anywhere between 3 to 5%. Fertilizer stocks also saw some selling in today's session. Almost every other fertilizer name also seeing losses of anywhere between 3 to 8%, with Chambal leading the losses there. And lastly, some stocks that were bucking the trend in today's session in an otherwise weak market. KPR Mills was one of them. Asahi India and PB Fintech ending almost at the highest point. The stock has now almost doubled from its IPO price. Back to you guys.
Right, take that point, Hormaz. Trust you to pull out some unusual movers in trade as well, along with the usual suspects. There were a lot of them, as you pointed out as well. So let's welcome, Amrish Baliga and Shilpa Raut, our experts for the day. Amrish, of course, independent market expert. Shilpa Raut joins in from Prabhudas Leeladhar. Gentlemen and lady, we start with Shilpa first. Technically, what did you make of the market move today, and where do you think it's headed from here?
Manglam, I believe, it was on expected lines. We had the target of 25,300, 25,500, 600. So this range has already, it's already done and dusted. So some sort of profit booking after the event yesterday was, well on cards, but it is a happy ending for the market as of today because the levels are respected, the gains are protected. So I believe even from here, if we continue to hold these levels, so levels of 25,800 to 26,000 for Nifty, and likewise Bank Nifty, if we hold 52,800, 54,000 should be the next target.
Okay, all right. Got that. Shilpa, stay on. We'll come back to you for some more questions. Let's straight away get to the first major stock of the day, and that, as Hormaz just told us, has to be what else but a Vodafone Idea. Now, the big blow came in from the Supreme Court because the Apex Court rejected some of these companies' curative petition, which was filed with the company saying that there was a calculation error made by the government in calculating AGR dues, adjusted gross revenue dues. Now, the reason why Vodafone fell off so substantially was that the market was hoping that this review will give a relief, at least a part relief on its dues to the company, but that is not to be. Hormaz, back to you. Then what does it mean for the stock? What's the word out there?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what comes out from the sell side tomorrow morning when they come out with their reports on Vodafone Idea. But as you mentioned, it was a big blow for them compared to the other operators like Bharti Airtel or Reliance Jio. The Supreme Court dismissing the petitions. As you mentioned, again, the AGR dues currently standing at over 70,300 crore rupees for Vodafone Idea. But in anticipation of this verdict, a lot of these brokerages had come out with some optimistic notes on Vodafone Idea. Citi was one of them, and they said that although Vodafone Idea is a high-risk, high-reward stock, but any potential relief on this aspect could boost its stock price by as much as 5 rupees a share on the upside. And even we spoke to Balaji Subramaniam of IIFL Securities after the verdict, and even he mentioned that if there was a relief, it could have boosted Vodafone Idea stock price by 4 to 5 rupees a share. But not everybody was bullish on Vodafone Idea ahead of this. Goldman Sachs had come out with a note last week. They mentioned that their fundraising that they have done is not enough to protect the loss in market share. Their free cash flow is likely to remain negative until FY31, and they had a 2.5 rupee price target on Vodafone Idea. Remember, it was this note that had started the downfall in the Vodafone Idea stock price a couple of weeks back. So as of now, 22 analysts have coverage on Vodafone Idea. 13 of them have a sell recommendation and only 4 of them have a buy rating. It remains to be seen what comes out of this, whether there are any more downgrades that are in store for Vodafone Idea. But as of now, the biggest single day fall since January 2022 for Vodafone Idea.
All right, that's on Vodafone. Amrish, your thoughts, Telecom, is it a one-horse race now? Because Vodafone seems to have, fallen off the cliff, almost halved from its recent highs. And as a result of which, even Indus Towers, which was becoming an investment bet because Vodafone was seeing better prospects, has fallen about 8-9%. Your thoughts here?
No, that's true. I mean, if you look at the judgment which has come today, is clearly negative for Vodafone as compared to Bharti, because they still have those deep pockets. The question which comes to everyone's mind right now is the survival of Vodafone. But then, if we look at a slightly broader, from a broader angle, would the government want only 2 major players in the telecom sector, or they would still need to have the third player? Which was sort of a story which was there in the last couple of years. And I still believe that the government would like to have the third player, who may not be too strong, but still is there to provide some competition. So if we go with that theory, yes, I think there could be something worked out going ahead to ensure that Vodafone Idea survives. What we have seen in the past 3 to 4 years. So keeping that in mind, possibly there may not be too much more downside from here. Surely I don't go with the Goldman Sachs view that the stock will fall to 2.5 rupees. Possibly we could see levels of 8, 9, but may not be too much below that. Because after having poured in, a decent amount of money, from the promoters as well as the other shareholders, I think they will still try and raise some funds. There could be some sobs coming from the government to ensure that the company survives. And clearly, I don't think the government would like to, kill the hen which, lays golden eggs. I'm talking of the sector overall, the telecom sector.
Okay, got it. So that's a view on Vodafone Idea coming through. Let's move on to the other big story. Now, Andhra Pradesh's new liquor policy gave a boost to some of the liquor stocks today by facilitating retail sales by private players. But you'd say if you check these were stocks actually down. You look at some of the other names like United Breweries, that was a stock that was reacting very well. Tilak Industries was reacting well. On a down day, some of these stocks managed a bit of green. So what's the story here and what's the potential gain, Mangalam?
The big story here is that the Andhra government, the Andhra cabinet has finally approved a new excise policy, and this comes into effect from October 1 for the next couple of years. This was anticipated by the street, and as a result of which, ahead of this news coming by itself, a lot of these stocks had seen a rally, and that explains why the sell-on news played out today. What does this do? This allows private retailers to go ahead and, or alcohol retail to be facilitated by private retailers, and also the price of select brands would be brought down to 99 rupees a quarter, so that aids the mass brands for a lot of companies as well. We had earlier spoken to a larger player out here, which was Tilak Industries, said that this could increase their volumes or compound their volumes by about 8 to 10% over the next couple of years. And analysts as well, concur with that view, 7 to 8% sort of volume growth for Alcobev players. To just drive home the point of the profit booking and the run-up ahead of that, you look at the last 1 month chart of, say, something like a USL, which was up 10%, saw some profit taking today. It was a mild profit taking because the run-up was just about 10%. If you look at something like Tilak Industries, you look at Radico Khaitan, you look at Global Spirits, all of them were up anywhere between 30 to 50% over the last 1 month itself. So maybe some profit taking wouldn't have been ruled out. But because Tilak gets nearly 30% of its sales from Andhra, was still a mover on the way up, and United Breweries were the top gainer largely because it had underperformed all its other peers in the past 1 month or so.
Absolutely. Even that stock was in sharp focus today, and it managed green on a day where there was a lot of profit taking going on in the mid-cap market. Let's quickly go back to our guests for a view on this. Amarish, Alcobev stocks, any preferences for you?
The day of the election, it was, very clear that over the next couple of months, we will have, a revised policy as far as liquor is concerned in Andhra. So, based on that, we had seen a decent move in most of the stocks, which are basically would benefit from the Andhra policy. And they are clearly Allied Blenders, Radico Khaitan, Tilak Nagar, and to some extent, United Spirits, because again, here we are talking of the lower end of the of the products. But then since it's announced today, I think we have seen some sort of a correction. But then overall, I would say it's quite beneficial, especially for Tilak Nagar and then for allied blenders. All
right. Thank you for that, Amrish. Let's get to another stock of the day. It was the top Nifty gainer today. NTPC gained over 2% after CNBC-TV18's newsbreak was confirmed. Their green subsidiary, which is green energy subsidiary, NTPC Green Energy, has filed its papers for the IPO, resulting in potential value unlocking out here as well. Vivek joins in with the details. Vivek.
Well, that's right. So NTPC's renewable arm, which is NTPC Green Energy, yesterday went and filed the DRHP to launch an IPO. What is the company looking to raise? As per the DRHP, it's going to be a fresh issue of shares where the company will raise close to 10,000 crore rupees. So significant fundraise coming in as far as NTPC's renewable energy arm is concerned. What is it that they're raising funds for? So one of the subsidiaries of the company, that is NTPC Renewable Energy, will use close to 7,500 crores of the proceeds from the IPO for debt repayment. Now, talking about the financials of NTPC Green Energy is concerned, revenues of close to 1,962 crore in FY24, operating EBITDA of close to 1,750 crore, and a profitability of 345 crore. Now, looking at the capacity, the operational capacity right now is 3.3 gigawatt, but the company has a very aggressive as well as an ambitious target as far as going ahead and installing further capacity. So, renewable capacity additions of 11 gigawatt planned in FY26, FY27, the company expects to reach close to 20 gigawatt, and by 2032, the company has a stated renewable energy capacity addition target of close to 60 gigawatts. So the runway here is very long, and again, this is going to be an important development as far as NTPC is concerned, given the fact that it could see significant value unlocking from this particular development.
Right, with that, we'll take a short break. On the other side, we will get your top market and corporate voices we spoke to earlier today, and also, more importantly, the key events that you need to watch out for tomorrow. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. Well, the United States Federal Reserve kick-started the much-awaited easing cycle with that 50 basis points rate cut today. In a conversation with CNBC-TV18, Chris Wood of Jefferies says that he was a bit surprised with the 50 bips rate cut. Take a look at his view.
But the key point here is what the Federal Reserve believes is the neutral rate. So my guess, that is probably in the 3 to 3.5% range. So even if the US achieves the soft landing, so to speak, we're probably going to be at between 3.5 by the middle of next year. But in terms of the short term, I'm surprised I'm surprised it's 50 basis points. Anybody who can read and listen is contrary to the messaging going into the meeting, so my guess at the margin is political.
All right, on the one hand, there was Jefferies, the other, there was JP Morgan as well. We spoke with Sanjay Mukim, who believes that investors will bet on the FMCG sector in India because stocks have underperformed for a while. Also speaks about the rural market play where there has been a fair amount of recovery. Hear him out too.
India, if you look at the behavior of stock markets, is a very mean reverting market. And because of the flow of liquidity, investors are always on the lookout for nice quality stocks that have underperformed for a while. And FMCG fit that bill very nicely, right? And then you have companies coming out and telling us on the margin really that things in rural India might be getting a little better. So to your question, I'm hesitating to give you a right answer. Are we seeing conviction that things are getting better at lower income consumption? Not yet. Okay. It's more of a hope trade. That's right.
Okay, so those are two big market views. Let's now come to a big corporate voice. Rajiv Bajaj, MD of Bajaj Auto, had earlier this year told CNBC-TV18 that he believes that 12,000 would be a fair value for the Bajaj Auto stock. Today, the stock actually hit that level. We caught up with Rajiv Bajaj once again. In fact, Parikshit was in conversation with him. And Mr. Bajaj said that the company has been doing really well, and he wouldn't rule out a stock price value of 20,000 over the next 6 months. Take a look.
We've really executed quite well in the last 6 months. We've materialized a lot of the potential and are well on our way, as opposed to 6 months back when it was still, kind of just brimming with potential. And if I were to again compare with the new market scenario, because the market has also moved up, so that's no credit to us. And if I look at the basket of companies I was comparing with, then it seems to me as ludicrous, perhaps, as 12,000 sounded at a time when we were closer to half that number. It seems to me that something closer to 20,000 is not out of the reckoning. At least in mathematical terms, one can justify it.
20,000 out there, upgrading his target price, so to say, on the stock, as brokerages would do it. But, let's wrap up on this edition of Markets Forward. But we don't leave you without telling you some of the key events to watch out for. Vinny Motiwala is here with the lists. Vinny.
So yes, what we're watching out for in terms from Japan, we're watching out for the CPI data as well as the rate decision from the Central Bank of Japan. That's going to be very important in terms of a move that will be coming in, especially after Fed cutting rates. Let's move on and also talk about Hong Kong. We're watching out for the CPI data there as well. On the domestic front, what we're watching out for is that Godfrey Phillips, the board, will be considering bonus issues. So let's watch out for that meeting. Other than Mankind Pharma as well as Saturn Credit, both the board members and both the boards will be meeting to consider some fundraise plans. So important to watch out for what is the amount of the fundraise and the use of this as well. Moving on to some of the other important stocks that we should be keeping an eye out on, because they will be going ex-dividend. We do have names like Mrs. Bector Foods, we have EMS Limited, Gujarat Fluoro, as well as Gopal Snacks, Nalco and National Fertilizers, which will be going ex-dividend tomorrow. So keeping an eye out on that. And important AGMs on your radar that you should have is BEML. That is an important one. CCL Products and Max Healthcare are some of the important AGMs that we're keeping an eye out on tomorrow.
Okay, all right, Vinny, thank you very much for that. So a busy Friday lined up ahead. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Markets Forward. Many thanks for being with us. Back with more news and updates in just a bit.